Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Universal Journey Show with your hosts, Dr. Brenda L. Bates and Donny Winter. Follow your heart, for only you know which path is right for you. That is our mantra. Universal Journeys is about how spirituality intersects with nearly every other aspect of our lives, even when we do not see it or realize it. Creativity and expression are our connections to the spiritual energy many seek to understand, and our identity is forged through this process. Universal Journey seeks to help illuminate the different intersections between creativity, spirituality, and identity in order to empower and enlighten. And tonight, our subject is the lunar effect. I think we called it full moon rising. We felt that it would be, trendy sounding. Um, how are you this evening, Brenda, dear?
Good, Donnie, and how are you?
Oh, I am peachy keen.
Well, that's a good thing. Peach
I
tea?
got my coffee, so I'm good.
Yay! So, yes, our show is definitely about full moon rising and the effects that it has on the body. And, oh, excuse me, just got to move around here a little bit. Now, there have been what they call myths out there about the full moon and the effects on the body itself. And I've read several scientific experiments that have been done, and they say that the full moon, in fact, does not have effects on the body. I have to say, I'm not so sure if I agree with that, only because of being associated with. Old folks home, if you want to call it that, as I am right now. And they have stated many, many times that when there's a full moon around, the residents of that particular facility, they change. They get a little wilder. Some go a little crazier, if you want to call it that. So they do notice the effects. And I also know that many of the police officers or police departments, they put more police officers on duty during a full moon because they have more incidents. So some of these particular scientific experiments that they've done, and the conclusion stating that there is no effect from the full moon, um, it's not. I don't think it's quite right. So with that, there is something that Doreen Virtue put out just recently, and she pulled one of her cards or oracle cards, and she pulled out, I believe it was the Archangel Michael one, and it's for protect yourself from harsh or fear-based energies by envisioning a cocoon of healing light surrounding you. And she said shields up. Now, shields up, when she says that, isn't necessarily shields up about being, protective and stuff like that, as in fear based, but more so as in protecting yourself from external energies, because a lot of people become very sensitive when the full moon does occur. Even though it says it doesn't, or the scientific world says it doesn't affect us, well, energetically it does. And it's more on the emotional basis. And normally, coming 2 days in, just like Mercury retrograde, but 2 days into the full moon cycle, you're going to start to notice a little bit of changes. People may become a little crankier and stuff like that, maybe a little crazier. And then 2 days after is when it starts to wean and sort of kind of go back to normal. So this is what she's saying about that. The other thing that's what she's saying is there's some um, irritable energy in the air, partly from insomnia related to the full moon, and partly from increased sensitivity of empathic connection to people feeling on edge with world events. So, I mean, it's almost like, in this, I'm just going to equate this with Halloween. When the All Souls and Halloween comes around, there's an opening of the veil which allows different energies to come through and affects us. That's why we go a little crazy. We're like, and all the rest of that crazy stuff. But but with the full moon, we still have a little bit of that going on, and we do change. And sometimes we have to to recognize, okay, I'm just being a little more sensitive than I would be normally. And that's exactly what's been happening to me the last couple of days is I've been more sensitive, and a lot of times it sneaks up on you and you don't realize it. So just be aware of that.
So, Brenda, my question for you is how regularly are you affected the same way by the moon, or does it vary based on situation? Because I know for me, I am sometimes more affected during the full moon. Other times I am more affected during the new moon. It really depends on the situation.
Well, and it depends on the energy that's given off by the planets that are involved with where the alignment is at the full moon and new moon. So like this particular moon for me isn't as potent as say the last one. The last one did a lot of upheaval and changing with those particular energies. You know that there's a lot of the stuff that you got rid of during the last one, or you had more courage because you're more agitated between the last one. And then for some people, this one may be doing that type of effect. I know for me, it seems like I'm always ahead of the game, more so than like a spearheader would be, someone going before in doing all this trailblazing. And so a lot of people will feel this time around that they're going to have to let things go, and that's a big uh, mantra or whatever you want to call it for right now, for people to let things go, let things that have been bothering them, to let them go, to get rid of them. People in their lives who have been agitating them and hurting them, they've been letting it go. It does suggest that at this particular time, not to write any contracts or get into any contracts and stuff like that. Don't start anything new, not for like a couple days afterwards. So just kind of be aware of that. Just put it off. If you can, put it off for a little bit.
It's interesting that you mentioned that letting things go, because I've been doing a lot of that the past week too, kind of just doing a lot of self-reflection and being like, okay, I need to remove this, this, and this from my life because in turn it will contribute more so to my happiness.
Mhm.
Usually I am aware of this type of thing, of that type of cleaning out, spring cleaning of the life. But it takes me a while normally to, circulate through it. But recently it's been like in my face, like, Donnie, get rid of that. You don't need that.
Yep. And sometimes that's what happens. I mean, it gives you, the universe gives you the subtle indications that you need to get rid of it. But then when it's down to the nitty gritty, it's going to give you everything, and you're going to like, I'm going to get rid of that stuff, and then you literally get rid of it because you, by all means, you get upset, you get edgy, and you're like, that's enough. I've had it, and then you let it go. But sometimes it takes us to get to that point to be able to let stuff like that go.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And unfortunately, not everyone is aware of that either. Um, I know if I were to mention like the moon thing to anyone, they'd be like, Johnny, you have lost a screw. But I can honestly say that it does make a difference. It does impact. For me, I am usually at my strongest during new moons for some reason, because that's when my creative energy starts to brim a lot. During the full moon, I'm a little bit more. I don't want to necessarily say that I'm a little bit more lax, but I'm a little bit more calm and focused and quiet, which is a little bit different.
Well, the new moon actually brings in a different energy. The new moon is where you can start to create what you want to occur later on, say within the month, within the year, so on and so forth. That's when you get all your ducks in a row and say, okay, I want this, this, and this, and this, and then you're putting it out there to God and the universe. Where the full moon is like, all right, here we are. This is where we can change things and get rid of stuff that we don't want. And speaking of which, I got something, or pulled up something from from Facebook that I actually, there are a couple things, but this particular one is what we're talking about. And it says February 22nd, 2016, full snow moon. It's called a snow moon.
Hmm.
And this moon is on the date of 222, which is an angel numbers, which is in angel numbers. This means keep the faith. That all the letting go and releasing that you are doing is on the right path. This is the most cleansing moon of the year. Time to let go. And that's kind of where I got to let go, even though there are other things like Doreen Virtue stuff and some other things that I've actually read when I researched some of this stuff. But, you know, the full moon and the new moon are definitely very high energetic um, times. And in
Mm-hmm.
the full moon, which is quite interesting, if you believe in spirit realm and stuff like that, is I'm just going to go here because it was I'm being guided to go here. But if you're around cemeteries and stuff like that, and if you're sensitive, you'll notice on a full moon you'll be able to feel or sense or see the spirits hovering over their graves of newly transitioned individuals. So, and that's where they got at that particular time. Necromancers would take control of those spirits that have been left behind with the body and use them to their benefit. Um,
That's interesting.
yeah, there's a whole new, not necessarily new, but that's a totally different subject that can be discussed at a later date, and it is quite interesting about the body and the spirit that's left behind after the body is deceased.
Mm-hmm.
So
So earlier we were talking about, scientific reports, saying that, oh, there is no evidence that is, able to be found for, proving that the moon has an effect on people. And I found this interesting article from spiritualresearchfoundation.org. I don't know, have you ever been there, Brenda?
no, I don't think so.
Okay, and it has like this point by point discussion about the moon and its spiritual effects. And one of its sections is why are recent reports unable to find evidence of the effect of the moon on human behavior? And it says some earlier medical slash psychological studies have documented the effect of the moon on human behavior, but studies conducted in recent years have failed to correlate this effect. The reason for this is that in the last decade there have been an unprecedented increase in the overall Raja Tama in the world. I don't know. Have you ever heard of Raja Tama, Brenda?
It's interesting that you're reading that particular post because I did read something on that earlier, and it's probably the same site that you're on right now. So that's the first time I heard about that. It has to be associated with the energy body, or from India or something.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, and it says that the success in Raja Tama has been primarily orchestrated by like negative energies. So essentially, from what I'm gathering, it's saying that the reason why people can't find proof of this is because there's been so much negative energy in the world, or so much chaotic energy, that it's been kind of clouding that. And it says this overall increase in the Rajatama component has widespread effect on all aspects of the world. The problems range from increased mental issues at an individual level to increased fights in family to terrorism and to natural disasters. As a result of the underlying overall increase in erratic behavior throughout this month, um, the additional effect of the new and full moon is still present, goes largely unnoticed in statistical studies. So it sounds like from what you were saying, this moon is that kind of release from it all.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. And it is quite interesting that you do have all these things occur. And the scientific community says, no, the moon doesn't have an effect. And part of what I read was that the reason it doesn't have effect, we're always saying that the moon has the effect on the water, and that high tides happen around the full moon. And what their studies says that it only rises about 2%. And that it shouldn't, because it's such a big body of water, that's all it rises. So it shouldn't affect us as it does, because they say it doesn't. Well, my thing is, if it rises any, our body is 90% water. In most of our water, or a lot of our water, not most, I can't take that back, but a lot of our water is actually in the brain area, because it's floating in the fluid and stuff like that. So if you have a slight variation within that hemisphere, you're going to be a little different. It's going to act and react. Plus, you think about this, the individuals who are already just a little bit off, and I'm going to say just a little bit off, they will be affected by that, because that one part of the brain that the rest of us are actually using, they don't have, or it's eaten away a little bit. And so it makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. That's interesting. I never thought about the water idea with that. Hmm. So, and see, the thing is, here is the problem with a lot of science, and this is why science is always so separate from dealings of spirituality and religion, is because if we can't see it, we assume that there is no proof of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's problematic. I think we need to start getting into this open-minded mindset where we're like, okay, you know, here are several ways this could be explained. And I think if people started thinking that way, they'd be a little bit more receptive to these different ideas.
Well, and the thing is you have to remember the scientific community didn't believe in ghosts for a very long time. You know, they had to come up with some sort of ectoplasm to prove that there are actually ghost activity or spirit activity out there. So, I mean, this is just one of those things that occurs. I mean, it takes the scientific community a little bit longer than the spiritual community to say, okay, this is real. But yet,
Mm-hmm.
the interesting thing is, most people believe in God, and there is no really proof of God. You know, the scientific community does refute that. It's like there is no God, and because there's no tangible evidence that God is out there and God is doing this and this and this. But in order to have faith, guess what? You have to believe in something. And I would much rather believe in God than sometimes those scientific communities.
That's a really interesting point that you made, because so many people are so secure in believing in this invisible man in the sky, but at the same time, they don't feel secure in believing that there are these other influences out there. And that kind of bothers me. That really irritates me, actually, because like a lot of what we're talking about is considered witchcraft or paganism or evil things, when in all actuality it isn't. Like it's just the observations of perceptive people on a different level.
Oh, and that's true. I have to go back to say that everyone is equal, even though many people say that that's not true. I have to say that it is, because what, say, Donnie, is different than what I know, but it doesn't make us any less of an individual. And when it comes to something like spirituality versus faith versus, the scientific community versus, Scientology or whatever you want to call it, they have their basis, just like we have our basis. And it really is all about accepting one another and not condemning. Condemning is not so good. That's what I don't understand, is why can't we accept one another for who we are and for, who they are. That's my thing.
Hmm. Yeah, I completely feel the same way. And it just irritates me, though, that so much understanding is preached, but when it comes for people to actually start implementing that understanding, it just completely falls away, like it never even existed. And I guess this is one of the primary things that bothers me about large religions like Christianity, because people pick and choose what's convenient for them. They don't observe the entire spiritual philosophy as a whole. They just, apply bits and pieces to whatever circumstance they're in.
Well, the thing with that is, and the reason it is because that's what they know at that particular time. You know, everyone knows something different. Everyone has a piece of the puzzle. Even spiritual individuals do not have the whole piece of the puzzle. So we have to go with what resonates with us, and they're doing the same thing. You know, so I'm sticking up for them at this particular time, even though some of it isn't quite where we're at. But it is where they're at. That's how they're going to express themselves. That's what they have to believe to have something to believe in.
Mhm.
So I have to go back to, like, who are we to take that away from them? Just like who are they to take our stuff away from us? So it, you
And,
know,
and you're right. I see where you're going with that, and I think the direction I was going in with my statement was when they use certain parts of, say, the Bible, for example, to undermine another group of people. Like, I will use gay people, for example. When they do that, they are picking and choosing specific things in order to undermine that group of people with their religious belief. Does that make sense?
right.
People like us, though, don't really do that at all.
Well, it's because we've been taught, or we've learned a little bit differently, and they're still going with what their pastors are saying, what their priests are saying, reverends are saying, even sometimes rabbis as well. Not so much though. So again, it goes back to faith. They have to believe in something. And unfortunately, that's something against gays is unfounded. There's only maybe one thing in the Bible that talks about gays, and that's only just in reference. And it really isn't about gays per se. It's about a way that used to be that someone said shouldn't be. But you still see it within many communities of Christianity. So it is kind of tough, kind of disheartening at times. But again, they are where they're at. I mean, look at us who are very spiritual. We're very connected. We have these gifts that have been given to us by God. And we're still considered, again, like you said, pagan or something like that, or of the devil. But yet, in the very Bible that they read, it does state in Corinthians 1 about the gifts, the spiritual gifts. So I have a hard time with that one myself.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think people are becoming more open-minded to spiritual gifts as well, because I've been seeing more and more situations where a lot of Christians are being like, oh, that person's an intuitive person. That person is very closely connected with the Spirit. They know the inner workings of the Holy Spirit. But I mean, I guess predominantly, though, there's still a lot of people who, you know, don't understand necessarily because they've been taught not to understand. They've been taught that, anything like that is considered anomalous or considered not what it's supposed to be.
Well, right. And people like you and I and others who tune into these particular energies, especially the intuition aspect, that gut feeling, we all have it. It's all being used one time or another. It's just that people like you and I, we have honed it a little more. We have opened up to the guidance of that particular aspect of God, or if you want to call it guides, angels, whatever that you'd like to call it. Again, that goes back to a belief system. We have to believe in something, and this is what we believe in. I mean, that gut feeling, I don't care what you believe in, you still get it. It is still there. It's like, or just a little inclination. I don't think I want to go there. And you'll go a different way. That's intuition, girls, guys and girls, guys and gals, however you want to call it. That's still intuition. And
Hmm.
that's still, part of that God-given gift that you have. You can't get rid of it. It is what it is.
Another interesting thing, and I think this is why intuition always used to be feared, is because intuition can potentially open up to the truth. And if people are afraid of truth, they try to restrict it as much as possible. They try to silence it as much as possible.
Well, and religion or faith, whatever you want to call it, especially the ones that want to control, that's exactly what they do is they control by it. And more you're seeing, like you said, that people are starting to talk the lingo that we already talk, like, oh, that you're intuitive or you may be empathetic. And then by being empathetic, you actually are, putting on the persona or the feeling that you have with these individuals, and you go forward with that. I have a situation just recently, actually today, I had a friend call me from Tennessee, and she's like, oh, what's going on with me, and I'm feeling this way, this way, and this way. And then she was like going back and forth and calling different people and everything else. And she finally found the source of why she was feeling the way she was feeling. And it was interesting. What's interesting about it is she actually manifested within her body almost the same symptoms as this individual was having. Now, granted, she's in Tennessee. This individual is up here in Michigan, and in upper Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
So it is possible to be able to be connected to many, many people and the world. I mean, world situations sometimes get to me. I don't even know what's going on with what's happening, and I still feel that particular pressure or energy. And it's like, oh, what's going on? Why am I hurting in a certain area and stuff like that? And after a little bit, then I find out that, okay, this is what happened. So what I try to do is each time that I feel something like this, I look at my time, because then I
Mm-hmm.
can go back in a timeline and say, okay, this is what's transpiring in this particular area of the world, or, just me.
Right. That's interesting. I never really thought of that either because the world, like world events really do affect me too, even if they're minor world events. Like I remember this was 5 years ago, I think, something like that, when Japan was hit by that earthquake and that big tsunami. Oh my God, like it hit me like a ton of bricks and I could feel everything. And that's actually the first time where I really realized how connected I was to everything and that how I needed to make sure that I was capable of, you know, honing it in a little bit and, trying to protect, not necessarily protect myself, but to be aware of how much I'm letting in.
Right. Well, I had a huge wake up, and it wasn't necessarily a wake up about this, but it was a wake up and a realization when 9/11 hit. The energies the day before were very, very heavy, very chaotic. It was like everything was going all over the place and stuff like that. And no one knows why. You actually feel that energy. Sometimes you feel a suppression or a heaviness, and you're like, oh, what's going on here? Why do I feel this way? And it's because of that external pressure of energies that's happening not only around you, but could be around the world. It could be around the area. And but that was definitely a huge wake up and a realization of that something was going on further away from myself.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I remember, like, I see back then when 9/11 happened, I was just a kid, so I really wasn't aware of, my intuition at that point. I mean, I'm sure that I had intuition. I just wasn't aware of, whether or not what I felt was connected with such things. But but I do recall feeling similar things like that during other major world events, and not necessarily tragedies or anything like that either. Sometimes really good things happen, and I get really uplifted. It could be something as simple as someone performing a really awesome speech, or things like that.
Hmm. That's true. For me, this last year or this year so far, we've had a lot of people transitioning over to the other side, and so I've been feeling a lot of that different energies. And when you have a time, we'll get back to the full moon. When you have a time of the full moon, more so for me than say the new moon, I will feel more and more of that energy of individuals who are getting ready to transition. For me, I always feel it on my right side, and it feels like a slight pain. It actually hurts me more than that hurts the individual who is getting ready to leave. And for me, when I feel this, I know that they're getting ready to, let go of that connection to the body. And it doesn't hurt them, but it hurts me. And then after that, what I feel is this really, really huge elation, the happiness of like I'm free and stuff like that. And it's really kind of a neat feeling to feel, but it's just that initial ping that kind of gets me. It's like, oh no.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's not hurting our loved ones who leave. And sometimes I don't know where that's coming from. I mean, it could be coming from anybody in the world. Sometimes I recognize it and can go back again on that timeline around the time frame that it happened. So, and I just recently posted on my Facebook page, Brenda L. Bates Facebook or whatever you want to call it, about Pope John Paul, when he passed away in 2005. That was quite interesting. So if you get a chance, everybody, just go back and check that out. It is in my notes. So
I remember, I think I read that once. Yeah.
yeah, that's a fascinating story, and I don't know why I was called to the Pope's side at that particular time, but hey, it worked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, did we want to go on longer or did we want to end here? What would you like to do, Brenda dear?
No, we can wrap it up. I mean, we stick at the 30 minutes. And I did want to do one plug, though. The radio station that we just left, Mystical Awakenings Radio, they have some great radio programs going on there. If I'm not mistaken, I'm thinking it is Monday through Sunday now. So every night they have something new and different. And so if you get a chance, go to Blog Talk Radio, mysticalawakenings.com, and check them out. They would love to
Mm-hmm.
see you there, or love to hear you there, anyways.
Another thing about Mystical Awakenings, this wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for them because, I mean, they helped encourage us to do this. And I really appreciate them for all that they do.
Yeah.
And I really miss them sometimes too.
Yep, I do too. I miss being on the radio sometimes too, getting it out there and having fun. But this is a different avenue, a different genre to get into. This is the wave of the future, if you want to call it that. Now, with that said, I would like to leave everyone with a parting note. Follow your heart, for only you know which path is right for you. Have a good night, everybody.
Have a good night.